Are you preparing for a performance review with your supervisor and you're not really sure what you're supposed to be doing or how to advance your career as part of this performance review? Stay tuned, I have some tips for you. This is a performance review, tips for employees. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Ben Preston, author of Harness Your Butterflies and creator of the Career Accelerator program, helping professionals just like you create the careers that they've always wanted. If you're new to the channel and you're interested in professional development advice, hit the subscribe button below. I have new videos every Tuesday, and leave a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm. Now let's jump into the tips. Okay, in today's video, I have 6 tips to help you as an employee with your performance review with your supervisor. Now, these are critically important for your career development, not only to know what your supervisor thinks of you, but to give them some information on here's where I want to go, here's my career direction, and kind of laying the groundwork for the future of your career at your organization. The first tip is to talk with your supervisor beforehand about the expectations. Now, what this looks like, you don't necessarily need to give away all of your, kind of what you want to talk about, but even if you have a meeting or two before, let's say a week before your performance review, you can say, hey, supervisor, I saw that we were having a performance review on next week on Tuesday. I just wanted to let you know that for me, I really want to talk about X, Y, and Z. Now, whatever those topics are, you need to make sure that they are both important to your career development as well as impactful for your underlying career moving forward. You don't want to waste that time with something as fluffy as, let's say, I want to take a training. While that is important, what you really want to talk about is here's where I see myself in the next year, here's where I want to go in the next 5 years, here's what I want to do within this organization, here's what I want to accomplish, kind of what are the big things, because what will happen is you can position those and say, I want to accomplish this, and your supervisor will be able to give you some direction and support, which is really what you want, moving into the next year. Number 2, before you have your meeting, make sure that you review what your performance evaluation said from last year. If you've been in your organization for enough review cycles that you have that historical data, make sure you go back and review what were some of the things that you worked on, what were some of the things that your supervisor said were gaps for you, what were some of the things that were directions to you for how you're supposed to improve. Review those and see if you've made any movement, because if you've made some movement on some of the things that your boss said, let's say that your supervisor said that you need to be working with more departments, or you need to be working better across your team, or you need to improve your communication. Whatever that looks like, make sure that you capture that when you do your next performance review write-up, or when you have your next performance review conversation and say, in theory, you would say, this is the direction you gave me last year, I've nailed it, I've knocked it out of the park, let's move into the future. So make sure that you review what you did last year if you have that record, and make sure that you're bringing that with you to your next performance review. Number 3, have a goal in mind. A lot of people go into their performance reviews with not a lot of information about what they want to accomplish, and they kind of just assume that it's the supervisor's job to tell them, here's how you did this year, here's how you can improve. As an employee, you need to approach performance reviews with a goal in mind, whether that is to talk it through a promotion, whether it is to talk through career development, whether it's to talk about internal mobility. Whatever that looks like for you, you need to go into those performance reviews with a goal in mind. How are you going to be driving the conversation so that you are talking about your career goals and what you want to accomplish? Now, it's obviously important to hear what your supervisor is saying to you about your career growth, but you want to make sure that you're bringing up the specific things that you want to talk about and making sure that those are clear. Tip number 4, build a business case. Now, business cases aren't necessarily useful for everyone, but if you have a specific promotion that you want to do, or you have some sort of mobility options that you want to talk through with your supervisor, let's say a pay raise, promotion, bonuses, any other types of things like that that involve a lot of finances, you're gonna want to have a business case prepared. You've talked about business cases in a couple other videos, things like this video that I'm gonna link to here, but make sure that when you're putting your business case together, you look objectively at finances. What is the industry doing? What are industry trends? What are some things that you need to pay attention to, either from a job title standpoint, a finance standpoint? What are the things that you need to be looking at? And then writing those down comparing those to where you are right now and making sure that you're having that as a resource when you're meeting with your boss. And make sure that you bring the citations as well. So if you, let's say, go to a salary survey and you find some information about how much you should be making, you want to make sure that you bring the source of that information with you to your performance review so your boss can actually review it and look through it and go in depth with you. Tip number 5, when you are in your performance review, make sure that you don't take anything personally. Now, sometimes this is a little bit difficult, especially if you feel like your supervisor has it out for you, which sometimes they do. But if you are just an employee and you are having your performance review, your supervisor might give you some feedback that's professional. It all should be professional, but sometimes they give you personal feedback. For example, I once had a supervisor tell me that I spend too much time talking and not enough time working. Now, part of that is professional, part of that's just my personality, but when it comes to something personal like that, I'm not gonna take that personally because it's not a reflection on me, but I can use that as a way of saying, okay, how can I use this to influence my work? If you feel like your supervisor is giving you some feedback that doesn't really make sense, it is okay to tell them that you disagree with that in a professional way, obviously. But if they say something like that, where they say you talk too much, in my case, I would say, you know, I'm just an extrovert, that's how I think. I'm like, I will try to spend less time socializing, but just know that talking is part of my process and how I communicate. So you can kind of do a little bit of pushback and just say, hey, from my perspective, I want to clarify that point and talk through what that means for me. But make sure that when you're looking at it from a professional standpoint, that you're not taking a lot of that stuff personally, because it is a professional performance review. It's not a personal critique on how you need to improve as a human. So just know that a lot of this stuff is all meant to be professional, so don't take it personally. And the last tip, tip number 6, is be professional, trustworthy, and honest. When you're going into your performance review, you want to make sure that you are talking to your supervisor or your boss in a way that's trustworthy, and you're not trying to be manipulative or get something out of them in a really shady way. You want to approach this relationship with trust, confidence, and integrity, and making sure that the conversation that you're having is authentic to who you are, and making sure that if there's parts of it that you really agree with or you really don't agree with, that you're sharing that in a really kind of compassionate and empathetic way. You have to realize the person giving you a performance review is also a person, and they also have their weak points, their trigger points, all that type of stuff. So just make sure that when you're approaching your performance review, it's important that you remain trustworthy and honest, and making sure that that conversation is candid, because this is your platform, your place to talk to your supervisor about where you want to go and what you want to accomplish. Let me know in the comments below if you have performance review tips for employees. And that's all that I have. Those are the big 6 tips that I have. Hopefully this video is helpful. Good luck on your performance reviews. If you're interested in more professional development advice and leadership advice, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. Leave me a thumbs up and a comment for the YouTube algorithm, and we'll see you next week.